This podcast is part of the Pull Up a Chair podcast network. Let's build community through connection, conversation, and collaboration. This podcast is sponsored by Lever Consulting, editing with a purpose. Check them out at leverconsulting.com for a free consultation.
What does it mean to be happy? 'Cause it looks like we all don't know. Glass half full or empty. Man, we just putting on the show.
Welcome to How's That Working For You Season 2. It's your girls Kat and V, but this time we're taking deeper dives into mental health and breaking stigmas. So get ready because things are about to get real and personal. How's That Working For You is a passion project created with the intention of creating space and awareness around mental health topics that are often hard to talk about. We are not professionals in the field of mental health, but we speak from our own personal experience and thoroughly conduct our own research to help educate others on why it's important to join this conversation.
Hey Kat, what's up?
I wanted to bring up relationships this week. How's that?
Oh my god, relationships? Are you finally admitting that you're in love with me and you're leaving Jordan for me?
I thought we were already married. When did it?
Yes. Yeah, you're right.
We disclosed this information to your husband as well.
Yes, you are right. Anyways, back to more important topics.
Yeah, so I wanted to talk about, just because we've talked about relationships so much in with the entirety of this podcast in general. This is the first time. Well, yes, I want to say this is the first person who's neurotypical that I've been in a long-term relationship with. So I kind of wanted to compare that to some mental health stats.
Oh, I mean, love me some stats. Throw the numbers at me.
So this study by the siteguides.com, an American Addiction Centers resource, did a study with a pool of 2,000 people. And they asked certain questions like, does your partner know that you have mental illness? What type of mental illness that you have? So I'm just going to gloss over some of the points that stuck out to me. So what I saw was that 73.5% of women told their partner that they have a mental illness. So I feel like that's expected because women tend to be more vocal and communicative about emotional topics like this or mental health topics like this. So that's not surprising to hear. But I also think that it's nice to hear that 52% of men, that's quite a bit.
That's over half.
Yeah. So it's over half of men, which is sad to say, but it's more than I expected. Again, I probably have a biased opinion because I've been with so many people who were stuck in their toxic masculinity. So maybe that's a biased opinion of mine. Anyway, there's also another important thing, and I'm going to just transition this into my own personal experience. When these partners decided to tell their significant others about their mental illness, and I have a very strong opinion about this, but I'll tell you what these other people said. Too bad, because 11.9% of men and 12.7% of women told their partners immediately. And I'm going to guess that this means, because they don't specify in the article, but I'm going to guess this means on the first date. Something like that. Well, because the next one, the next category is less than a month. So I'm going to say that immediately means upon meeting. I agree with the notion that you should definitely, no matter how, there are some circumstances where there may be an exception to that I'm not thinking of, but I think it's very important, especially for somebody with a severe mental illness like I do. It's kind of weird calling it a severe mental illness because I'm so stable now, but bipolar disorder is, I would classify as one of the more problematic disorders to have, especially when it comes to interactions with the people around you. So as we've talked about before, I had my hoe phase, where, you know, I dated around, like I left that very long-term relationship and I dated around, and I made it very clear that it didn't matter who I was on a date with. And I think some of them I would tell over, even before I met in person, like over like Tinder or something like that, or whatever app I was using. I'd say like, look, I have bipolar disorder. If this isn't something that you're interested in, you can, like, let's not waste either of our time.
Like right to the point.
Yeah, because it's just like, that's something that I'm never going to be able to change about myself. And it's something that can, like, has the potential to be very problematic. And with, like, in lieu with the theme of, like, good communication, I might as well communicate that right away, right? So alarmingly so, 6.2% of men and 5.4% of women waited more than a year.
No!
Which is like,
oh my God, no!
Yeah, can you imagine though? Like, how do you keep a secret like that?
That's like hiding a kid.
Especially if you're on medication and stuff like that. Like, don't you see the bottle? Like, trust me, my bottles are like everywhere in the apartment because I have ADHD and I leave shit all over the place. Like, how do you even hide that? Well, actually, funny enough, because I know people who've never farted in front of their partners either. So, like, maybe those are the same people. Like,
are they aliens? I don't understand. Your body does certain things.
I just don't. That's more than a year is just, that sounds like a recipe for toxic, just so much toxicity.
I am just now realizing I never had the talk with my husband about my mental illness, and it was just something that he knew about me. Oh my God, I am one of those people. I am one of those 5%. Oh no. I should tell my husband when he gets home that I have mental illness.
Oh my God. Well, you know what? He was raised by psychologists, so he probably just kind of like knew. I don't know.
Man, I feel so bad. Okay, anyways, as you were saying.
Well, but I also feel like you you handle your mental illness a lot differently than I do. And I feel like you've just, like, by the way that you were raised, and like you were like, you had to become very independent very quickly, like early on in life. And so you probably had to learn those skills a lot faster than I had to. Also, your mental illness isn't quite as like volatile as mine is.
I mean,
like,
that's a good conversation point. Like, at what point or what severity of a mental illness should you disclose, and at what point is it pointless?
Right. Yeah, and I did kind of brush on that a tiny bit, saying that, like, well, maybe like people with anxiety, like, you know, clinical anxiety or like mild depression, that type of stuff, like maybe that's not as important to bring up. But like, I feel like people with BPD, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, like that type of like mental illnesses that can impair your judgment and thinking and the way that you interact with other people. I do not condone waiting a year. Like, it's just,
Well, how, as a person who's actually had these conversations, how do you usually start that kind of conversation? Do you just say, hey, I have a mood disorder? Or is it more like, I have something to tell you, something important, I need you to open your soul to me for a second?
You know, I think it's like it varied from person to person, really. And I think that, like, and I'm going to backtrack, because I did say that I told everyone, but like, if I saw like no potential in the person, like if I saw like no potential of there being a relationship with the person, I wouldn't tell them. Like, that's just, you know. But I think with people that I could see going on at least like 3 to 4 dates with, I would say. And I feel like not only did it already like break that barrier of like, okay, now you know, it also weeded out all the people, like all the shitheads that wouldn't have the patience for that, you know? Like,
yeah.
So it's just like, I think it was a win-win situation for me, because it's just like, I have nothing to hide. Like, I personally think that while my bipolar disorder and ADHD can get in the way of a lot of things in my day-to-day life, I think that I have enough like positive qualities that outweigh that.
Well, that's definitely true. There is a lot of greatness that comes along with Kat.
Yeah, but it also comes with a lot of chaos. And I want to get into that. Because like let's take a break from the stats real quick and just talk about like what my personal experience was, because like you did ask like when, like how did I bring it up. So for example, God, I hope I'm remembering it right, because like gosh, my relationship with the person I'm with now went by really quickly. So I think I told him over like the dating app first.
So before you met in real life.
Before I met in real life. And I think because he was so adamant about like, it was very clear he wanted to be serious, and it wasn't something that was like, he wasn't about to play games with me. So I was just like, okay, well, if that's what you want, then here's everything that I like, I am a crazy person, so like here you go. Like and lo and behold, it's been like over a year and we're still together. So but yeah, so I brought it up over chat, and I think that's I would recommend to other people that line of action, just because there's nothing to lose, right? Like, you haven't met the person in real life yet, so why? I don't know. I think that I learned this the harder way, is that just in general, it's like, why do we stress ourselves out so much about what these men that we don't even know care, like, think about us, right?
Yeah. Oh my God, I could not agree more. Could not agree more.
Well, because like, I mean, you lived it with me, where it was like I was just like having panic attacks and like breakdowns about these like garbage people that treated me like trash. So like, why, it just, I'm going to give advice to other people so that they can avoid my miscomings. Don't give a fuck about what people think.
You also met some really garbage people online. And I'm sure that when you were honest about your mental health condition, you've bumped into some pretty negative, or I would imagine you bumped into some pretty negative responses.
Yeah, I mean, like, it was more like ghosting. Nobody ever like insulted me to my face or anything like that.
I see. Which is good. I'm glad.
Or yeah, I mean, but like, I would have preferred like a respectful, like, this isn't for me type of thing. But I don't know. I think that there was like a lot, like, just like an interesting number of men who found that, like, who found me as a challenge.
Oh,
like, she's crazy. Like, and I would like say that, and I'm not gonna lie, I did it sort of to my current boyfriend too. I was just like, you know what, like, I'm a lot, I'm a lot, and I can get a little crazy, and like, if that's really what, like, if you really want that, then like, okay, like, let's see. And honestly, I think that was like an exaggeration though. Like, at that point, I really wasn't that crazy. I just wanted to scare the people that did. Like, I wanted to scare the people who weren't worth it away.
I mean, as your best friend, I was kind of disappointed that I didn't get to be the person scaring them away, because that was my job. You did it for me, though.
It's true. Let's move away from like the pre-dating stage, because I feel like we've talked enough about that today.
All this to say that the best advice that you can give would be to say it or disclose it early on, if that's what you feel is necessary, depending on where you fall in your mental health conditions. Do you have any later in the relationship advice for people in neurodivergent relationships.
Do you want to like hear from like the neurodivergent perspective or the neurotypical perspective?
I mean, let's do both, because I think it's important to get both points of view.
Yeah. Here's what I learned is that I used to think that I needed to date somebody who was also neurodivergent in some sort of capacity because they would understand me. And I was pleasantly surprised when I met somebody who is neurotypical, my bad. He didn't just all of a sudden go crazy for like no reason.
That would be a whole different podcast.
It would be a whole different podcast. Long story short, I was wrong about that. I mean, actually, no, because it depends on the person, right? Like neurodivergent people can be with neurodivergent people, like you and your husband, right? Like that's not uncommon either way. But what I thought was that I needed somebody who was also, quote, like, my toxic language back in the day would be broken, right? Because I was broken. I thought I needed somebody who was also broken to understand what it's like to be broken. That's where I want to just kind of that's where I want to focus on right now, is because I was wrong. Granted, I was with the wrong broken people, obviously. But I think that with neurodivergent people, there is that risk of people not being evolved and doing their own self-care and like doing whatever they need to do to stay healthy. You run that risk when you date somebody who's neurodivergent, right? Like as for me, I'm also neurodivergent, but I did all of my work already. Like I was doing all my work, I was taking all my medications, and at that I could safely say that I was ready to be in a relationship. And with the people that I was in a relationship, or the person, I guess, that I was in a relationship with, he couldn't meet me halfway, right?
Yeah.
In fact, he was a piece of garbage and I hate him. I mean, I don't hate him, but...
You've moved on.
Garbage nonetheless.
Yeah.
I moved on. But what I learned is that being with a neurotypical person, it has its own challenges, but it's also everything I need in a lot of ways too. Like when I'm a little bit unstable, when I'm a little bit distressed, he's calm and collected because he doesn't deal with anxiety the way that I do, right? So it's just like, so he's able to navigate that better than people who do deal with anxiety, right? Or in a different way, at least. He came from a very supportive and just healthy family. Like I've just never, these people have a group chat that they update daily.
Really?
Like they send pictures.
That's bizarre.
Okay. I like before meeting.
Sorry.
That's weird. Yeah, it is. And no, and I told him, I don't know, but like I told him immediately that like I've never seen that before. And I've talked to a few other people, like some toxic families also have group chats, but I come from an immigrant family and I don't think that's ever going to like be a thing for my family. Well, actually we do have a group chat with my parents, but it's not quite as, what it must be like to be able to just like open your phone and see a nice pleasant baby picture of your nephew. Like, why can't I just have that every once in a while instead of my mom like fat shaming me or telling me to do something that she told me to do like 10 minutes ago. Like I don't know. Anyway, that's just another example of how like I've been able to witness these beautiful things about like neurotypical life that I didn't know existed, you know? I guess I can talk a little bit about like, I'll move back and forth, but like talk a little bit about some of the things that are more difficult. As I mentioned before, because he's neurotypical, he doesn't know what it's like to be a little broken, right? So there's that disconnect sometimes. And, but because, and I think we've talked about this in like past relationship episodes, is that like what a relationship really needs is for both or everyone in the relationship to make an effort to like make things work.
Oh,
like
preach.
That's like the biggest thing.
Preach.
Yeah. Like you can be in the most toxic situation. You can have like, I mean, for your life, V, I mean, your life is always blowing up like all the time, but your husband is like always there for you 100% of the time.
Yes.
And that's because you and he both made that commitment to like work together to make shit work. So, that's like something that I've been really grateful of in my current relationship, because it's just like there are moments where, and I find it more often with my family, where I'm just like, I hope he doesn't leave me because my family's crazy, like, you know, or that type of thing. And he never ceases to reassure me that that's not going to be a problem. And I don't know, it's just crazy to me, because the bittersweet aspect of having dated both ends of the spectrum is that I'm like constantly faced with the opportunity, like just like the opportunity to compare, right? It's just, I know that a lot of people say like you shouldn't compare, blah, 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 but I think this is a healthy comparison, right? Because I moved from somebody who let me reiterate my logic, my very, very wrong logic when I was dating in the past, was that because I have ADHD, I thought that being with somebody with OCD would help balance that out.
Oh my God, no.
That was a terrible idea. Highly 1000% do not recommend.
God. No. I can kind of see the logic.
Yeah, I don't know. I understand what you're saying. But yeah, and I think it also stemmed from a lot of like, I actually had this conversation with my parents like recently with my boyfriend in the car. I finally, like, it got to a boiling point where I was like, you know why I was with somebody who treated me like garbage for like 3 years is because I was raised by somebody who treated me like garbage for like during my formative years. Like, if you compare the personalities between the person who raised me, not my parents, I think I've mentioned this before, I lived with my family member. Oh yeah, we actually mentioned it in like what, 3 episodes ago?
A few episodes ago, yeah.
Yeah. But this family member was OCD and very verbally and physically abusive to me. And we've talked about how just physical abuse is just like the norm in Asian families. But yeah, it trickled down into me thinking that that's what love looked like. And that's why I ended up with somebody that treated me the same way and had a very similar personality. I mean, I guess that ties in with how relationships develop when you have a mental illness, right? Like, or trauma of any sort. It's so important to deal with that trauma so that you make smarter decisions moving forward. And it took me being in a relationship with somebody like that for so long and walking away from that to realize that I deserved so much better. There are definitely moments where, for example, I think this is like, it happens time to time where I have to set boundaries. Like, if I'm crying, it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm mad at him, or like it's not directed at him or anything like that. It's like just because I'm crying at the situation, and sometimes I just need to recollect by myself.
I see.
I'm a crier. I'm a very emotional person.
I can see where he's coming from if it's something he's not used to. I don't know what it's like in neurotypical land, but I could imagine that it's like if you're crying, it's a problem, and that'd be something he'd have to learn to not immediately react to, but find different ways.
No, he's like, actually, I honestly, there are like multiple instances where I feel like he's handled it like the best way possible
That's good.
Better than I could have imagined. Honestly, anyone would be able to handle it. Well, there was a point, like, I think I talked to you about it privately. I was like looking at MBAs, and most MBAs, like, they want you to have full-time work experience and blah, 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 blah. And I got like very triggered because this program that I was like really interested in. They waited until the very last minute to tell me like, oh, like after I had already told them that I don't have, like, because of my mental illness and like what I've been through, I didn't have the opportunity to work full time, right? They waited till the very end to tell me, oh, by the way, you need 4 years of experience. And I was just like, I got triggered. Okay. Like I got very triggered and like I just got really upset. Like it was one of those moments where I kind of like hung up and just like started crying because I was like, I don't know what to do. It made me feel all those like insecurities that I had about work and like being a functioning adult and stuff like that. Like I felt all of those in that moment. And that's why I just like started crying, and he just came up to me and like reassured me and made me feel like that's okay. And he constantly does that. He's like, it's fine. Like you're exactly where you need to be. Even though what I'm always so not impressed, but like I'm so grateful for is that like, even though he's in a much more, I don't know, advanced, I guess, like he's further along in his professional career by a long shot. Like so far, he has 3 master's degrees and like, you know, he's been at a stable job for 2 years, right? Whereas like for me, I'm kind of still a mess. I'm still like struggling to get my thesis finished for my first master's degree, and I work part-time, and I'm just juggling so many things, and I feel like, God, it's just, as someone with like, I feel like bipolar disorder, I have that down. Like that's medication, exercise, meditation, that's enough for me to handle my bipolar symptoms. But ADHD is like a whole different beast that makes all of my ambitions and my goals that much harder for me to accomplish. I'm very grateful for somebody who can provide me that structure that I need, because he's clearly been through lots of school and knows the drill. Like I'm just very grateful to have somebody that can offer me that structure without belittling me and making me feel even more incompetent than I already do, which was very prevalent in past situations.
Yeah, because I'm sure just being told that, oh, well, you didn't do it, so you're dumb, isn't helpful. Like, that's not going to help you get anything done any quicker.
Here's my theory, is that I feel like there is somebody for everyone out there, right? Like, maybe not everyone, but you know what I mean? Like, I feel like he genuinely enjoys giving me the structure that I need as much as I genuinely enjoy receiving it from him. You know, like and that's like what I think works for us. I don't know. He's just very good at what he does, and I appreciate it fully. Because without it, sometimes I feel like I'd be so lost. Like I legitimately just yesterday just started crying, and I think I texted you during that moment too, where I was just like, I don't know what I'm doing like half the time. I don't know how I'm a 27-year-old woman and I still don't know what the fuck I'm doing ever. That's funny. I mean, yeah, I guess like we're all trying to figure it out. Some people are just better at it than others, but I don't know. I feel like and that's probably why we're such good friends and why I work so well with him, is that like you guys have similar personality traits and like qualities. You offer me the same structure sometimes when he's not around, and like he does that for me. Like he basically took your job.
I know, like I can't emphasize to the audience enough like how after you got serious with this dude, your calls to me dropped by like 50%. Like talking about stats, it's like 50%.
But hey, now when I call now I call you like to actually talk about like shit that is enjoyable, and I'm not like calling you in like just a fit of rage or a fit of just hysterics because I'm crying about some sad little boy, like, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad we're past the fuckboy stage, but I mean, all right, if you were to give any important last minute advice, or if you want to leave this podcast on a specific note, where do you want to go with that?
Well, I mean, like I mentioned it before. It's like if you have a mental illness, just be open about it. There's like, honestly, it's 2021. I think it should be normalized to be able to to talk about this openly, especially with somebody who you want to spend the majority of your time with, right? And then second is that like and I feel like this is like just I can't express this enough. It's like, even if you think you know what you want, like be open to things that to things that may not fit this mold of what you think is right for you. Because for me, it was like I thought I had this very clear idea of like the person that I wanted to be with, and lo and behold, I kept being with that like the very like cookie cutter person that was like that, and that person was like horrible for me, terrible. And it wasn't until I met somebody who was like so drastically different until I realized that like, wow, that's not what I needed. This is what I need.
Yeah. That is important to note there. Like you said earlier, there is someone out there for everyone. You just gotta find them. Be yourself.
Be yourself. Yeah, exactly. Oh, yeah. And I guess I should say the most rewarding aspect of claiming your mental illness and just being like, look, this is what I have. You either deal with it or you don't. Like, that's such an empowering feeling. Seriously. For real.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for this episode, Kat. And thank you so much for everybody listening at home. If you haven't already, be sure to follow us on Instagram at How's That Working For You. We have a Twitter that we never touch. If you want to follow us there, same handle. Anyways, the sources for this episode can be found on our website. Links for everything can be found at the description of this podcast. If you haven't already, check out some of the other shows on our podcast network and consider donating to keep this show and others like it alive. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye. Interested in sponsoring the Pull Up a Chair podcast network?
Want to be heard by the audience of all 4 of our original shows?
All sponsorships through our non-for-profit are tax deductible.
More information can be found in the description of this podcast.
Drink Something, Say Something is the podcast for those of you who are tired of other beer podcasts. Tired of the jargon, tired of all the rigmarole. We're going to bring on brewers, bartenders, and everything in between to talk about anything and everything from beer to the rest of the universe. Come crack one open with us every other Thursday.